Werewolf here. I warned you of this. If you watched the video I made several weeks ago, everything I said turned out to be right. Unfortunately. But the betrayal by those on the right of their own Republican candidate in the New York City mayor election was far worse than I'd imagined at the time. I've never seen anything like it. Many pundits, influencers, and just people in comment sections on the right were telling their own candidate, Curtis Sliwa, to drop out. Many repeating the line that a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mandani. And that we need to vote for Cuomo because he has the higher number in the polls, and he is the lesser of the two evils. How is that even a democratic election when we tell our own candidate to drop out, so the only choices left are between a Cuomoist and a communist? Look, at the end of this video, I will tell you what lessons I think can be learned from this, what I saw in this, and how we can improve moving forward so that the midterms don't turn to be a like disaster. But only if we notice these lessons hidden within this disaster and we do what we can. But one thing you can do right now is, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, forward this to some people that you follow online. I'd like to get some other perspectives. Maybe there's some other ideas out there that I haven't heard yet or haven't thought of that we can build upon all this. But unfortunately, for this past election, many on the right played a part in this disaster. But I want to talk about how pathetic, how non-masculine this push towards Cuomo was. First of all, let's face it, a Democrat running in New York City already basically wins, so we had to do more. Also, Mandani, he has the aesthetic and the persona of a young guy promising to solve people's problems, so he has a really good chance of winning, of pulling in the non-partisan, non-political voters, the average person. Now, I will get to what may have been the real reason, the ulterior motive for Trump endorsing Cuomo later on in this video as well. But back to this lesser of two evils push. They, the right, were pushing this assumption that if our own candidate dropped out, that every Sliwa voter, and keep in mind that would be Republicans, people that aren't affiliated with political parties, that maybe just like the guy, want an alternative, or even there's always some Democrats too, welcome aboard, that every one of these people would vote for Cuomo. And these people telling you this are the guys that claim to be about moral values, and yet they were the ones calling Cuomo the killer for what he did to the senior citizens during COVID. Maybe this was Cuomo's campaign strategy from the start. Maybe some of the people saying this online were affiliated with Cuomo. This is the guy who introduced Common Core math to New York State. All right, when we look at the totals, Cuomo still would have lost, shortly. Now, there's around half of eligible voters in New York City that don't vote. In 2022, despite the momentum of the Republicans, a lot of Republicans didn't show up to vote. Did we take time to find out who these people are, to reach out to them, to listen to them? No. Look, we have to be the campaign. The establishment Republicans are not going to help us. We have to make this a grassroots thing. The establishments, they write this off as a loss. In these cities, they just run to uphold their ticket and funding and all that. Now, imagine yourself as a volunteer for Sliwa on the ground. Maybe you went door to door. Maybe you helped organize an event. And then some right-wing pundit. I was listening to, on the radio, Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, or as I call those guys, Gay Travis and Buck Sexton. They were insisting that Sliwa drop out. Now, that is not confidence all of the risks that you, as that volunteer, took, putting yourself out there, were that easily undermined by these pundits with tons of followers, sitting from a cozy chair, getting paid to say what they did. Now, I'm also going to argue the contrary with two Democrats in the race. Democrats that may have not been comfortable with Mandani would be more likely to go to Cuomo, dividing the vote. That would have been Sliwa's opportunity had we backed him up. He did a lot better, even though he only got almost 30% 4 years ago against Adams. He got hardly 8% here, but again, it just does not look good telling him to drop out based on some bogus calculation, based on assumptions. And now, why did Trump endorse Cuomo? I could think of a few possible reasons beyond the straightforward one. Notice that Trump made the endorsement on the eve of Election Day. Early voting starts 10 days earlier in New York. Maybe this was really to harm Cuomo's reputation in the eyes of Democrats. Another possibility, in his book, The Art of the Deal, Trump mentions that Mario Cuomo gives him a call asking for his endorsement, and Trump implied that he endorsed him. He says he likes to get with the winners. So maybe there is some level of cooperation behind the scenes between Trump and Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo did essentially stand up for Trump when Letitia James pressed some bogus charges against him back in 2024. Another weakness that I want to point out here, the online right sphere exhibited a tone of deafness. Many were pushing the fact that Mandani was a Muslim and assuming that he was an extremist. They're forwarding that meme, how do we go from 9/11 to this in New York City, we've forgotten. Well, who's that going to appeal to? Is that going to appeal to the average voter? No, it's only going to appeal to people on the right already. And you also have to understand, in a liberal city, they see it as the opposite. They want to be seen voting for what they see as the minority candidates. They're proud of that. So the online right didn't emphasize much of a willingness to understand the people they're trying to influence. What else can we do to become the next campaigns? I want to recommend two books to get started with. The first is by Professor James Campbell. It is called The American Campaign, and it's a study of voter behavioral patterns over the decades, and these, surprisingly, are unchanged even up until this date. It's a great place to start. I learned a lot from it. The second book is called Anything for a Vote. It's by Joseph Cummings. It's a fun book to read. The chapters are really short, and it's an overview of every political presidential campaign since 1800s. I found uncanny parallels that just jumped out at me with these old campaigns to modern campaigns. Who would have thought that Trump had so much in common with President William Henry Harrison's campaign, or the parallels between the 1876 Rutherford B. Hayes versus Tilden and the 2020 Biden versus Trump. One campaign I want to study more, and I might do a video on this, is Ulysses S. Grant versus Horace Greeley. Well, for now, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave some comments. I want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and until next time, life, liberty, and the pursuit of all.